Hi, this is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am the creator of Audio Secrets Training Event.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, international speaker, a multi-millionaire, successful real estate investor. His name is Cole Hatter. Cole Hatter is business partners with Tai Lopez. And in this interview, Cole Hatter, he breaks down layman's terms about how you can make successful money in the real estate industry. Also in this interview, Cole Hatter, he breaks down layman's terms about how you can definitely invest in profitable anchor real estate properties like commercial buildings and residential real estate and much, much more. So remember, this is not BS information. The right information will change your current situation. Wealthy people take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people take advice from broke people. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes in this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, successful businessman, the multi-millionaire. His name is Cole Hatter. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll be well informed when I publish more underground audio interviews. So, check it out. I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Cole Hatter to the show.
Oh, man, that was a heck of an introduction. I feel like I'm walking into a stadium of like 50,000 people screaming right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cole, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about your phenomenal brand, Thrive, and about building wealth. I gladly appreciate it.
For sure, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
To everyone that's listening, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Cole Hatter is going to break down layman's terms about building wealth and about his phenomenal brand, Thrive. Is that correct, Cole?
That's correct. Let's do it.
Now, what I'd like to know, can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the powerful Cole Hatter? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Right. So I got started in life actually as a firefighter. I decided in about junior high school that's the career I wanted. And so when I went to high school, I took regular high school classes like any high school student would. And then in the evenings during the week and on the weekend, I would go to a local junior college, and I did all my fire prerequisites so that when I graduated high school, I went right into my academy and right into a department. And that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, Arthur. I just wanted to help people, save lives, fight fire, the whole deal. And 2 years later, I got into a car accident that temporarily put me in a wheelchair.
Wow.
And while I was recovering, because I had some pretty substantial injuries, we didn't know how well I would recover. We knew I would walk again, and they knew I wouldn't be paralyzed for life. But just because of how injured I was, it was uncertain how physically capable I would be. And in order to be a firefighter, you have to be obviously in perfect physical health. So we had to take that one day at a time. And while I was down and out and healing is when I found entrepreneurship. And I said, you know what? I've got an uncertain future of how physically capable I'm going to be. The only thing I can control is my mind. My mind is clear, so I'm going to use the brain, and I'm going to start some businesses because I could do that without arms and legs, obviously depending on the industry, right? So I did that. That was 12 years ago. Forward, and I've had my ups and downs. You know, I had instant phenomenal success because when I got started, I was in the right time. I was doing real estate investing in 2005 when real estate was booming, so it was just easy to make money. Then all of a sudden, 2008, we had a recession and real estate collapsed, and I got my butt kicked. And I slowly started losing everything until about 2011 when I made some changes, came back, and I've made millions of dollars since. So that's the broad strokes of it. As far as like you asked, what exactly I do as an entrepreneur. You mentioned I do have my own conference, Thrive, which is my 3-day business conference. That's my jewel. That's my favorite part of anything I do in business. I still own and operate my real estate investment company. It has evolved and grown quite a bit. And then I have a marketing company and a couple little side hustles as well that pay the bills. But all in all, I'm most proud for my girls, my wife, and we live a great, blessed life, man. So that's my 33-year journey in 2 minutes.
Cole, can you explain to the audience what is the most important day of your life when you experience financial freedom?
So as far as the most important day of my life, like the day that I realized, hey, I don't have to worry about money anymore. Is that the day?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to say it was probably like 2012. I bought maybe it's 2013. I don't remember the day specifically, but I'll guess it was in February or March when I bought the home that my wife and I are currently living in and paid cash for it, and realized that my first time around, this is a great lesson to your audience. You told them to grab a pen and a piece of paper. So here's one of the lessons I had to learn the hard way. The first time I made money from 2005 to 2008, I had cars on leases, I had boats, and I had tremendous overhead, and I didn't actually own anything. I was just leasing it or had monthly payments on it, and when my income went away, guess what happened to all that stuff? It was gone because I couldn't afford to pay for it anymore. I was having to trade cars back in early and the whole deal. And so the second time around that I made money, I was paying cash for everything. And a lot of people in my industry disagree with that because they say, hey, you want to use leverage. If the bank's willing to pay for it, why would you use your own money? Use the bank's money and use leverage. And I get that, and that's exactly how I live and operate my businesses. I leverage everything in business, my properties, et cetera, unsecured business lines of credit, all of that. But in my personal life, I don't care what anyone says. I'm paying cash because now I own that thing and no one can ever take it away from me. So I've bought all my dream cars and I bought my dream home cash, and I realized, oh my gosh, if anything ever happened in my businesses, I could literally work at a grocery store and my life wouldn't change because I have no overhead. I mean, I have insurance that you have to pay for and like cell phone bills, utilities, et cetera, but I don't have mortgage payments. I don't have car payments. I don't have any of that stuff. And I'm living in my dream house. I'm driving my dream cars. And so I ended up buying that house in March of 2013. So I think it was somewhere around there where I said, holy cow, with how much my life now costs, I don't ever have to worry about money anymore. And, it was definitely a great feeling. I was only 28 years old. So I was like, hey man, I'm in my 20s and I'm doing well. But at the same time, it just makes you hungrier to go to the next level. I didn't wake up and say, well, I don't have to try anymore. I've made it. So I'm just going to chill now. It was like, it gave me a fire to get to the next level.
Basically, you got educated about real estate investing, and basically, when you got educated about real estate investing, that changed your whole entire world. So the right information converts into life-changing transformation?
Totally, yeah. And, I got educated in real estate a hard way as well through the University of Hard Knocks, as they call it, as well as getting some early coaches. But I think the greatest lessons that I've gotten is a combination of both my teaching me and then life experiences. Unfortunately, the life experiences have been the most expensive. I learned a lesson when I lose money, which I think a lot of us would, but probably would have been cheaper to have just hired a mentor or somebody to teach me, right? But so I think the big thing as far as learning is, and Warren Buffett says this, I learn in every experience, even my failures. When I've lost a lot of money or when a relationship went sideways in business or whatever it is, I make sure that that I can objectively kind of remove myself from the situation, not internalize it, not personalize it, not be attached to the outcome, but just kind of observe and see what lessons I can learn, even in a bad scenario. And I think that's important for your audience to do as well, that even in the worst case scenario, when you're in it and you're feeling it, man, it's tough. And it's hard to be objective about things. But maybe after some time has passed, a day, a week, or whatever it takes, not too long, but a little time has passed and we've calmed down of whatever bad experience we just had, step back and just say, okay, what can I learn from that? And that's probably been my greatest teacher through my career, is just being able to objectively see where I made a mistake and to learn how to try to avoid it next time.
You mentioned billionaire Warren Buffett, and I know when he was around 8 or 9 years old, he was reading financial statements, and actually him and Charlie Munger, they are value investors, and he actually started accumulating wealth to after he was 50 years old. Isn't that something?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think that Warren Buffett's a great example. He's now 86 years old and still shows up to work 5 days a week. And so there's so much we can learn from Warren Buffett. I know that in his personal life, he gets some criticism because people say, nobody's perfect. And so he has family, and, everyone's like, oh, why isn't Warren Buffett giving all this money to his kids? I personally, if I was a multi-billionaire like Warren Buffett, wouldn't give my children billions either, right?
That's true.
But as a businessman, I think there's a lot we can learn. I think that he's just he's a great guy. He's got a great creative mind, and he has an ability of seeing income opportunities where others don't. Where you and I might not pick something up, he goes off to make gazillions of dollars with it. So I'm a follower of Warren Buffett for sure.
I am as well, and I love being connected to life-changing information that's 40, 50 years ahead of me.
Totally. That's a good way of putting it. He has so much life experience that by following Warren Buffett and kind of stepping into his shoes, we can see what life looks like ahead.
Cool. Let's talk about entrepreneur. Now, the word entrepreneur means entrepreneur, and it is a Latin word, and it was invented in the 15th century in France. And over 300 years later, that word still exists, which is entrepreneur. And a gentleman by the name of John Baptist, he invented the word, and over 300 years later, that word still exists, which is entrepreneur. So entre means between, and pantra means to take. So it means to take lower productivity and increase it to higher productivity. Can you explain to the listeners, Cole, how are you increasing your productivity in your businesses?
So this has actually been my theme of the year. So I'm really glad you asked that question, because I woke up in January of this year with my wife and, evaluating the year ahead, saying, okay, we're having a great run right now. What do we want to work on? What does our theme this year want to be? Last year was simplification, just so your listeners know. 2016, I woke up in January of 2016 and said, I want to simplify my life. I'm too pulled all over the place. Let's start cutting out the things I don't need. Let's stop making commitments and saying yes to everybody and making my life more simple. This year, my theme is automation, or to outsource and to grow. And so what you just talked about of how we get to the next level, and the only way to really do that is to automate and to outsource. For a lot of my entrepreneurial career, was what the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, he calls a technician, where I was the business. An example of that would be like a gym trainer. I just went to the gym and I have a trainer that trains me. And although he's a great guy, and I'm not using this in any way to disrespect him, he has his master's degree in sports medicine. He wants to go off to be like a physical therapist or whatever. But for right now, he has to show up to the gym, and I have to pay him $100, and he's there training me in person. There's no way to scale that business model, because as he's currently operating, he will always personally have to be there holding the weights and setting the exercises to be compensated. And the only way to make more money and to grow his business would be to maybe start his own gym and then hire other trainers to come work for him. And now 20 people are training at a time, and he's getting a piece of all that. So that's an example of what Michael Gerber calls a technician, or what a lot of people call solopreneurs. It's people who own their own business, and they are the business. And that's how I was for many years. And so this year has been huge on hiring more staff and integrating more technology that helps take some of that workload off my plates. And so I've got a great kind of step-by-step process for this for your listeners. So again, I'm going to, if anyone hasn't grabbed a pen yet, you're going to want to do this. But in order to scale and grow your business, not just, your bottom line revenue, but just the impact you're making too, because I imagine based on who you are, Arthur, as a person, that much of your audience, like you, is a heart-centered entrepreneur and doesn't just want to make money, they want to make a difference. And so if you want to scale your income, but also your impact, here's how you got to do it. Number one, it's all about outsourcing to one of two places. Number one, to other people, and number two, to technology. I do acknowledge that many people early in their businesses don't have the financial capability of hiring a staff. I didn't either. So the first thing to acknowledge about 2017, the year that we're in right now, is that there is more technology available than ever before. It's cheaper and easier to use than ever before. And there's so much technology that will allow us to not have to personally do everything ourselves, but to start to outsource and to automate. So step one, as much technology as you possibly can by using maybe a CRM or some type of an email service to do your correspondence with your list, et cetera. Like, outsource as much as you can to free up bandwidth. And then when you can, hire more people. And that's what I've done this year. My company has doubled in size. And between the people that are working for me and the technology we're using, it gives me the time freedom and the autonomy to be able to do more of what I care about, number one, and then number two, grow my business. So that was a long answer, but for anybody who's wanting to grow, you got to outsource to people and technology. And then here's the last bit of guidance I'll give you. The question people get is, okay, I understand that, Cole. That makes sense. I got to hire people when I can afford to. In the meantime, I can use some technology. That's fantastic. But what do I stop doing first? What do I start outsourcing first? And so here's the formula I would use for that. Number one, start outsourcing the things you hate to do. You shouldn't hate your business. And there are parts of everyone's business that we just, quite frankly, don't enjoy, and that's normal. So start outsourcing those first, the things that you do not like to do. And then number two, outsource what you're weak at. And I say this carefully because I don't want to give anybody an excuse to, stop growing and to stop investing in themselves. That's not a thing. But let me give you an example. One of the things that I'm not great with are the finances of my business. I'm good at math. I know how to do addition and subtraction, all that stuff. I just don't want to sit around balancing checkbooks and screwing around in QuickBooks and, you know what I'm talking about, like dealing with all my accounts payables and accounts receivables, which in my real estate business, I mean, there's a lot of moving money. I'm not trying to sound like I'm a quote-unquote rich guy, but I've got to pay for materials. I've got to pay city taxes. I've got to pay utility bills. I've got to pay contractors. I've got to pay, to do one real estate project, there's 35 different people or cities or whatever, or utility companies getting paid each month. I don't want to sit around and, you know what I'm talking about, have to cut all those checks and, So the financial burden of just running my business because of how much money is going out and coming back in, just with the nature of what I do, was literally a part-time job. And I'm sitting around on QuickBooks and, oh man, it was brutal. So I hired a CFO. This guy now works for me full-time, and I don't worry about any money anymore. All I do is make it, and then magically everyone who's supposed to be paid does get paid, and everyone who's supposed to be paying me actually pays me because I forget to follow up with people and be like, hey, by the way, you owe me money, and he does all that for me now. So I don't do that anymore. I outsource it. Now, here's what I was saying. This isn't an excuse to become complacent. So, Arthur, I could have literally gone to tax classes. I could have gone to accounting classes on the weekends, and I could have spent the rest of my entire life trying to figure out how to just be mediocre at best at accounting. Or I could have just hired a dude that's a CFO who's gangster at it to just do it for me, and now I could triple down on my strengths. So I want to be clear that when I tell people to outsource what you hate and what you're not good at, that doesn't give you an excuse to just sit in a hammock the rest of your life and drink a cocktail and watch the waves crash. That just means that somebody is filling in those gaps for you so you can become the best person in the world on your strengths. And so, again, instead of me working my whole life to just be okay at accounting, forget that. Someone's doing my accounting for me. Now I can be the best in the world at what it is I do.
That is absolutely true, where you just focus on building your strengths. And when it comes to business, your team is your foundation. And I know you said that you double in size, so that meant that your EBITDA has definitely grown in size. And when it comes to me buying a business, I always focus on buying a business that has massive EBITDA growth rate. Because if that income is coming in and income is increasing in revenue every month, I know that's a profitable business that I want to be a part of.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Cole, you mentioned about outsourcing, and that is very critical when it comes to building your brand. Now let's talk about delegation. Now I know the minimum wage of a millionaire is around $524 an hour. So I always tell my listeners, what can you delegate for $524 an hour? Or you can go way beyond that. What can you delegate that's within your current budget? How important it is for entrepreneurs and business leaders to delegate tasks out that they're not currently good at so they could just focus on increasing their revenues in their businesses.
Oh, it's so critical. So yeah, like we were just talking about, it's so important, and it's interesting that you have that hourly rate down. I personally use $100 an hour as my threshold, so maybe I'm even a lower threshold of what I don't want to do. But I say if there's anything that somebody else can do as good as me or better that costs me $100 an hour, or more, right? But $100 an hour is kind of my threshold of what I can pay someone to do it, even if it's multiple people. Dude, I am not doing it myself anymore. And yeah, with my actual take-home income outside of businesses, because as we chatted a little bit on this call and even before we started this call, I own multiple companies, and so some are more profitable than others. But what my personal take-home is at the end of each day, my hourly rate is a decent amount of money now. It wasn't always, especially after firefighting, and I was living on my parents' house trying to learn how to walk again, right? But right now, in the season of life and business I'm in, I'm doing great. And so, yeah, I just financially can't afford to do the tedious junk that I could pay someone $20 to $100 an hour to do for me, and I don't do that anymore. So I think your question was, how important is that? It's very important, because if you're stuck in the minutia, and if you're stuck in the grind of your business, not that you're not grinding, obviously we want to work hard, but if you're stuck in just the grind of your business, then your business will never grow, and that bottom line, revenue, et cetera, won't change, and if anything, it'll go away. So I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to figure out what their hourly rate is, what they're worth, and anything that isn't something that would render your attention, outsource it for sure. Because not only will your business grow, but your quality of life and how much you enjoy your business will grow as well.
Now, you have a phenomenal, successful real estate business. Can you explain to the listeners, do you invest in profitable anchor properties like apartment buildings?
Yeah, so I do two things in real estate, residential and commercial. On the residential side, I'm buying just single-family residences, almost always for a flip, right, the fix and flip method, where I buy it, I renovate it, I remarket it for sale, and I sell it and make a quick influx of cash. Our sweet spot is around the $1 million mark. I live in Orange County, California, and so we're targeting homes that we buy maybe between $800,000 and $1 million that need anywhere between maybe $80,000 and $200,000 worth of repairs, so that by the end of the day, when we're all done with the project, we are invested into these properties between $1 and $1.2 million. And then what's called the ARV, the after repair value of those properties, depending on what we bought them for, is anywhere between 1.2 and 1.5. So we then relist it for 1.2, 1.5, somewhere in that window. After we pay our closing costs, carrying costs, realty fees, and everything, we're shooting to net between about 120 and 180 per deal. 120,000 per deal. That then obviously covers overhead of business and then pays me personally. I then am taking the money I'm making from that and the other businesses that I own, and I'm a professional speaker as well, so I do have some fees in there. I take my cash flow, and instead of going and buying a new Lamborghini Aventador or something stupid like that, we're then rolling it into commercial real estate investing, which is what you just asked, specifically focusing on multifamily. So within real estate, there's a bunch of different areas. Obviously, I'm within commercial investing. I'm in a hotel room right now, so there's hotels, right? And there's commercial buildings where like doctors and attorneys would operate out of. There's warehouses. There's all types of commercial, but what I like is multifamily apartment buildings, and I'm shopping for apartments between 20 and 90 units right now. That's a big enough building that it's exciting for me, but small enough that I can manage it, own it on my own without having to create a partnership. A lot of these bigger buildings, 500-unit, 1,000-unit apartment complexes, are oftentimes bought by a group of investors, and that's exciting too. But right now, I just want to be all on my own. I don't want to have to ask anybody else what their thoughts or opinions are on anything. I just want to control everything, and I can afford to buy and have the skill sets to manage a 20 to 90 unit apartment building without needing anyone else's help or expertise. So that's it, man. I'm making a ton of money where I can in residential real estate and in my other businesses, taking that money, living off of it, obviously, paying my bills, supporting my family, and then all the extras instead of frivolously spending it, investing it into commercial real estate.
So with your real estate career, you never syndicated deals where you was actually a partner with accredited investors where they can invest in your profitable deals?
I have. One time I created that fund, and so, we had to file with the SEC, and it just did not work well. It was such a bad experience. I will never do that again, where I start the fund personally and then with a group of accredited investors go out there to secure real estate. I'm in two funds right now. One is a $75 million fund and one is a $40 million fund, which was why part of the introduction, as you said, I've invested in funds exceeding $100 million because those two funds are over $100 million. And so what both of those funds are doing is acquiring commercial real estate. And again, we are all accredited investors. So I have worked in those types of syndication. I'm a passive financial investor where I'll just put cash into the fund that someone else is managing. One time I did manage that fund, like I said, and it was not a great experience again. So for now, for men and women who, again, are starting these funds where they've got everything in place and all I got to do is write them a check, and I'm either getting a monthly, quarterly, or annual dividend out of investing in that fund as an investor, I am doing that, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's just cash flow.
Can you explain to the listeners, Cole, how do you feel about REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts?
So there are different REITs out there. I think that's another great way for the, how would I say, I don't want to say average investor because that doesn't sound right, but someone who's not a savvy investor who maybe works a job. I'm in Las Vegas right now. I'm staying at the Venetian. So maybe it's like the front desk manager of the Venetian Hotel who has a great salary and has a great career, but obviously isn't a savvy investor. They're not in the game, in the trenches. They have a 9-to-5 career, right? And so for someone like that to find a REIT out there and invest their money into that type of real estate investment trust where others are managing it, and it's, again, all done legally, filed through the SEC, so that a non-accredited type, because what's big about the REITs is non-accredited investors can invest in those if it's offered through something like a Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Edward Jones, Fidelity, Vanguard type scenario versus a lot of the investments out there do require you to be an accredited investor. And we could talk about what the definition of that is if your audience would be interested in knowing that, or a simple Google search can teach you. But so REITs are great for, I would say, the non-investors out there that know that putting their money into a savings account at the bank or putting it into a CD doesn't even give them a large enough return to make it worth their time. They're almost always not even hedging against inflation in those types of bank, savings or what they call investing accounts, which is a CD. And when they want a little bit of a better return, putting into a REIT, I think, is a great option for someone who might not know the inner workings of real estate, yet still wants to participate.
Now, I know that you mentioned you comply with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, when people invest in real estate investment trusts, they basically don't have no control over that trust. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So as a passive investor, you don't. It's almost like a stock. I think stock investing is a big enough concept that all your listeners would understand that. But like if I were to go invest in Coca-Cola. I'm not controlling Coca-Cola. They're not asking how I feel or what I think about anything. I'm just riding the market. And so a REIT is similar, where instead of investing in the company of Coca-Cola and hoping that they're making wise decisions, Coca-Cola owns Monster or Coca-Cola Dasani water. And so when you invest in a brand like Coke, you're just hoping that they are continuing to gobble up the brands like Monster Energy Drink, et cetera, to further their empire. And I use Coca-Cola because Warren Buffett is a huge investor in Coke. So I'm just using that as an example. But you don't actually control it. You're just studying those that are controlling the company, and you think they're making wise decisions. Or we can go to a totally different industry like Tesla, right? You can invest in Tesla and you just hope that Elon Musk continues to bring to market great products. And so the control you do have is how much money you put in deciding to participate. But what Elon Musk does with Tesla, or the owners of Coke do, or the people who are running Coca-Cola do, you can't control. And very much the same as REIT. The way that the feeling that you control it more is it is investing in real estate. And there are real estate as an industry as a larger animal than any company is. So it's a way to almost hedge against risk, where let's just say a CEO like Elon Musk, I don't want to use Elon in this example, but a prominent figure, a company like Apple was with Steve Jobs, where the owner and the guy running the show is a prominent figure. Let's just say that person drank too much one day, got into a DUI, and somebody was injured, where they drank too much. This is terrible, but this is what we have to think about as investors. So, terrible scenario of what actually really happens in the real world. And so this owner, this prominent figurehead, this company, like a Steve Jobs, rest his soul, let's just say somebody like that drank too much, got in an accident, and someone got injured. That's going to crash stock. And you can't predict human behavior. Now, you can predict the industry and the product that it would have done well, but when a prominent figure of a company like that makes a human mistake, it can dramatically impact stock value. And real estate is such a bigger animal that there's not someone that's going to drink and drive and crash real estate. Our economy impacts real estate, and our economy is so large and real estate is so large, it gives us time to react. And so that's why, I'm obviously biased. I've made all my money in real estate. I do invest in stock as well. I have a lot of stock in different companies like Tesla, for instance. But that being said, that's why I do believe that investing in some REITs and getting into real estate is a great play for a lot of beginner investors.
Wow. Now, let's go back to you invest in profitable anchor apartment deals like commercial real estate. Now, I know capitalization, that's just a formula for yielding money. So when you buy apartment deals, the lower the cap rate is, the higher the purchase price is going to be. But the higher the purchase price is going to be, the lower the cap rate will be?
Right. So a cap rate, like you said, is a capitalization rate. And to determine the value of residential real estate, we use what are called comps, which is an abbreviation for comparables. And so, if I wanted to sell my house, I would have, a real clear idea of what it would sell for based on what houses that are my size in my area at that time are selling for. When you get to commercial real estate, it's a very different animal because there might not be comps. Considering buying a 47-unit apartment building in St. Louis, Missouri. That's what you're interested in buying, and you've got it under contract, and you're wondering what its value is. There might not be another 47-unit apartment building in all of St. Louis, if that makes sense, right? It could be a very unique one-off. And so because you can't use comps in commercial real estate other than rents, well, you charge rents, sure, but the actual value of the property, we use what's called a cap rate or a capitalization rate. And that's just a math formula of dividing, what your purchase price is, divided by what your net operating income is, or NOI as we call it, net operating income. And that will give you a percentage. You move the decimal over 2, and then boom, you've got your, and actually, sorry, I said that backwards. It's your net operating income divided by your purchase price, and that gives you your cap rate. And then you can do that the reverse, a cap rate in place of the purchase price. You can do the net operating income of a building divided by like 8% cap rate or a 4% cap rate or a 10% cap rate, and then that will tell you what the value of the property is. So you talked earlier that you like looking at businesses and evaluating what a business is worth.
Mm-hmm.
Commercial real estate acts more like businesses in that it's their numbers that create their value. How well they cash flow, and again, that capitalization rate is indicative of what the value of that property is.
Wow, this is an incredible interview, and I appreciate you coming on my show today, Cole.
No worries, man.
Now, you just broke down layman's terms about profitable commercial real estate like apartment buildings. So when you increase your NOI, your net operating income, you will increase the value to that commercial property?
Absolutely. Yep, I'm glad that you picked that up. And I'm guessing you do some investing yourself because you've got all the terms down. But, so a house, way to make a house more valuable is put in some upgrades, renovate it, fix what's broken, etc. Commercial, obviously you can do renovations too, but what makes it more valuable is to make the math better, like you just said. So if I can increase my net operating income, which you do two different ways, by the way, then it makes the math better. See, if I'm going to buy a property and pay $1 million for it, and it's got a net operating income of, let's just say, $80,000, just to keep it simple, that would be an 8% cap rate, or an 8 cap, because I'm paying $1 million for a property that brings in $80,000. That's an 8 cap. Now, what if I could then take that $80,000 and increase it to $90,000 or even $100,000 and get an extra $20,000 net operating in a year? It's going to increase the value of that property way beyond $1 million at that initial purchase price of an 8 cap. And so there's two ways to do that. Obviously, raise rent, fill vacancies, and make it generate more income. And then you want to lower your operational costs as well. So the two ways to increase your net operating income is to make the property make more money. You can do that by, again, if there are vacant units, getting those rented out. And if the rents are a little lower than they should be in the market, raising the rents as leases renew to the market value of what rents should be. And now it's creating more income. And then if you can look at lowering your operational costs as well, then now you have a property that costs you less to run that's generating more income before your net operating income goes up, and therefore the value of the property does as well.
So you pretty much buy profitable commercial apartment deals that fits your sweet spot as long as the property is not over leveraged.
Totally, yeah. And when I'm buying a property, depending on whether it was currently over leveraged by the previous owner or not is irrelevant to me. I've got to look at a 70% loan, maybe a 25-year fixed interest rate. And so I'll be coming to the table with 30% down, whether that's out of my pocket or a private lender, a second position lender, and then getting a traditional commercial financed deal of, probably 70% of my purchase price, or at least loan to value, and then, a 25-year fixed. And so I won't over leverage a property personally because, through traditional financing of getting that 25-year fixed, they won't give me more than 70% in today's economy, in today's lending environment. I could go and do more creative financing, like getting a hard money lender, et cetera, or even a private money lender to finance the entire thing. But like you said, I don't want to be over leveraged. I don't want to 100% finance a property through some rich uncle where I'm paying that uncle 10, 12, 13% interest-only payments on that property, because like you said, then it would be greatly over-leveraged. I want to go to the bank, get a 70% loan, 25-year fixed, and then figure out where I'm getting that 30% either out of my own pocket, which is what I do personally, just so you know, that 30% down payment I'm pulling out of the houses I'm flipping or the other businesses I own, getting a loan for that other 70%, putting 30% down and cash flowing. But there are deals that are juicy enough, or that you're buying at a good enough deal, or I should say even steal, that I'm going to the bank to get a loan, and I come to you, Arthur, and say, hey, man, you can put down that 30%. I got the bank to put down the 70%, and we can partner on this deal. I own 70% of it. You own 30% of it. And, we can own this together. And that's a way of doing it, too.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Now, you just mentioned the power of banks. So basically, 90% of the bank's loans are sold to the secondary market, which is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Now, picture this in your mind. Now, what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do is they package that loan money up into what are known as government-insured securities, and the government-insured securities is connected to the derivatives market. How do you feel about government-insured securities and the derivatives market?
Yeah, it's interesting. And then also they get packaged up and become mutual funds, and it's funny that almost, I don't know what percentage, 90+% of people's 401ks are invested in mutual funds, which is their own mortgages sold back to them. So I think that's interesting. So as far as that market, government guaranteed, supported, insured, all that stuff, for me, basically, I believe it's just a warm and fuzzy. I don't want to be a naysayer or a negative Nancy. But at the end of the day, like the FDIC insurance that you have of I think it's $250,000 in your savings account when you put your money in the bank, all those are assurances in my mind. And again, there's I guess no scientific proof of this. This is my theory, so anybody listening to this can disagree. But I personally believe that all the government supported and backed bonds and securities and even the FDIC insurance that we have in our checkings accounts, if you guys know what I'm talking about, when you put money in the bank, it says up to $250,000 the government will protect in case of XYZ. I think those are all feel-good assurances that, heaven forbid, our world was crashing in a way that the government actually had to step up and do what they said they would. I think they would be incapable, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, can you imagine if there was such a bad economic meltdown and we had another 2008 times 10 that was so bad economically that banks were literally shutting down and all of the deposits that you and I had in the banks, whether it be our savings, CDs, or checkings, was completely gone. And the government's like, oh, don't worry. We have all of you good to go up to $250,000 times 380 million Americans when our government is already $19.9 trillion in debt. There's no way they're going to be able to pay for that stuff. So I think these are, personally, and again, maybe I'm a naysayer, but I think that these are assurances that the government gives us to create economic stimulus so that you and I, the average man, the non-political, non-bankers, will continue to put our money into these vehicles to keep the economic wheel spinning, right? Our economy is a cog of a lot of different, it's the wheel of a lot of different cogs, and you and I have to continue to spend money. We're a capitalist marketplace. We need to continue to invest money to keep our economy stimulated and keep it growing, and that I understand, and that is a fact. And so what I think our government does is it creates these big old assurances and insurances that they're going to be there to protect us, so that you and I are willing to get off our pocketbooks. But I don't think it's anything any different than smoke and mirrors, personally. So I don't know. That was maybe a negative answer to say I don't care much for them personally. I think that it's just the way that our government, instead of a scare tactic, it's like a security tactic, so that we give them more money. That's all.
Well, I know a lot of active investors that is in my network. When they purchase apartment buildings, the underwriter is your best friend, and they deal with a lot of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac funds. Right.
Yeah, so Fannie and Freddie, like you said, those are the two big ones. I mean, so far so good. I like closer control over my money personally. Big institutional investors using big money, and depending on who your guys are, right?
Right.
So I guess it depends on what you're doing. For me personally, let's say I go flip a house in Orange County and I make $150,000 cash. That $150,000 cash for me personally, I want to invest and manage the investment. The farthest away my money are those two funds, because I invest in those funds and get paid monthly out of them, but I'm not technically controlling the investment decisions. But I'm not going to go invest in these bigger securities types, what Fannie and Freddie are putting together and repackaging up and selling to the market and the derivatives market and all that stuff, because I want to control my money more, and I can take the $150,000 and, like I said, either put it in a commercial real estate project, invest into a startup. I do angel investing that hasn't come up yet, where I take someone's ideas or their startup business and invest in that. And I guess maybe I'm a control freak, but I like my money being closer to home, and I like managing myself, because thank God I'm pretty good at it, and I trust myself, giving myself a return better than anyone else.
Now, throughout the years, with your creative investing in apartment deals and residential real estate, have you ever got involved with asset-based lenders, where they just basically lend you money based on the value of the asset?
Yeah, that's what I do the majority of the time, and that's exactly what I call it too. So, in the traditional sense, if you go and get a 30-year fixed mortgage at the bank for your house, they're going to want to see, in today's lending standards, 2 years worth of tax returns, 90 days worth of bank statements, 90 days worth of check stubs, kind of pull your credit card, all that full. We call it full docs. And then there's this creative world called asset-based lending, where let's just say, Arthur, I came to you and I said, hey man, I'm buying this house. I have it under contract for $500,000. It needs $100,000 worth of repairs. So I'm going to need $600,000 altogether, but that house and the whole neighborhood are selling for $900,000. So I'm going to need $600,000 from you, but then I'll own a $900,000 house. Now you are obviously, let's say this is your money personally, you're going to look at that margin or that and that spread, and you're going to say, okay, I don't care what Cole's credit score is. I don't care what his tax returns are. I'm lending $600,000 on a house that's then worth $900,000, and where they consider the asset more than the borrower. And the consideration of giving money is more, again, by the asset. And so I do that in my real estate business nonstop. I other than commercial loans, I can't even remember the last time somebody has pulled my credit or looked at my finances for a real estate related transaction. They're always looking at the number on the deals. And so when I bring you comps that show this house is going to sell for $900,000, and you see a purchase contract of $600,000, and maybe 2 or 3 different contractors are all saying they can fix it for $100,000, then with certainty that you're only going to have loaned me $600,000 for an asset that's worth $900,000, and heaven forbid I get hit by a bus or something happens, you now own that house that technically you've only paid $600,000 for, that's now worth $900,000, and you could sell it and make the difference. So I think asset-based lending is huge. It has made me millions of dollars in my career, and I highly recommend anybody listening to this that you would learn more about that, and then find these creative type lenders that are out there who will lend their money based on the asset and as first and only secondary the borrower.
Well, I always say you're only as strong as your team, and team stands for together everyone achieves miracles. And when you pretty much were investing in profitable real estate, I love real estate because you can also own the air rights to that real estate as well as the mineral rights. So if you in the backyard and strike oil, all of that is actually yours.
Right. Yeah, and that can vary depending on city and state. I think in California it's down to 25 feet above and below. Mm-hmm. So I would have to check on that because it's literally been a decade since I learned that. But last I heard California, I own the 25 feet above my house and the 25 feet below my house. And if I struck oil at 26 feet, and quote unquote good old government gets it, or at least the state of California, which is the government. But that is true though. Yeah, you do have that. Now there are other areas though. So for instance, that's my house that I live in. But if I were to buy a plot of land out in the desert, depending on the zoning and the laws, I can buy, like you said, the rights where, hey, I think there's gold here or oil here, and I'm going to dig down miles, and whatever I find is mine. You absolutely can do that, for sure.
Cole, let's talk about the power of using video. Now, I know a couple of years back, Google bought YouTube for $1.6 billion. So video is hot right now. Can you explain to the listeners the power of using video? Should entrepreneurs and business leaders use video to expand their brand?
Yeah, video is huge. I hired a full-time videographer for January of this year. I would just use one intermittently last year, like when I would be doing my event or when we were having like a family type scenario, I'd hire a videographer to capture the moment. I now have a full-time videographer who's actually here with me in Vegas who's documenting everything. And he literally lives with me. He travels with me everywhere I go. This guy goes with me and films everything. And so most of that footage just gets stored on a hard drive and will probably never get used. Mm-hmm. But if I ever needed B-roll of anything, like so we landed yesterday at the airport and we're driving down the strip to come to my hotel, he's hanging out the window capturing footage. And so if we ever wanted footage of the Las Vegas Strip, I now own that footage that we shot, of course, and I can use it. So the point is I've gone deep into video, and It's huge, man. People, I don't know if people are lazy or what, but if you're gonna have a video sales or a sales page that has a ton of copy that takes somebody 5 minutes to read it, or a video where in 45 seconds you can explain it, people are going to watch your video before they read 5 minutes on your website. And video is so much more personal. If you saw a website where it's just a bunch of text that says, "Hi, I'm Cole, and I'm this and I'm that," and that's all there is to it, versus a video where you're watching me on the screen say, "Hey, I'm Cole, and here's what I do." Man, videos is so important.